This daughter had spent her whole life feeling invisible until her sister died, and suddenly, her grieving parents tried to pull her into the spotlight like a backup dancer in someone else's show. At the funeral, and what she said to them, let's just say it shattered years of silence. Was she cruel, or finally standing up for herself after a lifetime of being second best? And that's just the first story. Because today, we've got some of the most unhinged, heartbreaking, and downright messy AITA stories yet. We're talking wild family showdowns, shocking betrayals, relationship chaos, and boundary-pushing moments you won't believe actually happened. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, where we break down the wildest Reddit AITA stories every single day. If you love drama, tough moral dilemmas, and the kind of family and relationship mess that makes you question everything, you're in the right place. Our goal, 10K subscribers, and we're getting closer every day. So do me a quick favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, and let's dive headfirst into today's emotional roller coaster. Am I the asshole for saying no child support, no opinion? The writer is just 17, standing on the shaky ground of complicated adult relationships they never asked to be part of. But their story doesn't start with them. It starts with betrayal, layers of it. Let's rewind. The writer's mom had two friends, let's call them Amelia and Jessica. Jessica was married, and her husband, a serial cheater. First with Amelia, she got pregnant. Jessica somehow found it in herself to forgive them both. Then came the next betrayal. The same man cheated on Jessica with the writer's mom, and again, Jessica forgave them. Again. Honestly, how much betrayal can one person absorb before they finally break? Jessica sounds like a saint, or someone who has been broken too many times and stitched herself up with forgiveness just to keep functioning. Fast forward, the writer was born from that second affair. For years, Jessica's husband denied being the writer's father. But life has a funny way of forcing the truth to the surface. When he finally looked at the writer and saw the undeniable resemblance staring back at him, he agreed to a DNA test. And yeah, the results came in. He is, in fact, the father. Now here's where it gets even messier. After years of denying, ignoring, and basically abandoning this child, he suddenly wants to play dad. He started visiting once a month, barely. The writer says it's awkward, and how could it not be? Then, during one of these visits, he catches the writer reading a romance novel. Harmless, right? A teenager reading fiction, probably trying to escape the chaos of real life for a bit. But instead of bonding or even making small talk, he decides this is the moment to parent. You're too young for those books, he says. You have to stop reading them. Not a conversation, not a gentle suggestion. A command from someone who's barely earned the right to be in the same room. The writer, not having it, calmly fires back with a line that slices deep and clean. No child support, no opinion. Oof. He was stunned. And really, how could he not be? Now the writer's left wondering, was it too harsh? Let's be real for a second. This man denied the writer's existence for years. He watched from the sidelines, or maybe didn't watch at all, while someone else raised the child he helped create. He gave no support, no love, no presence. And now that a paternity test confirmed what he tried to deny, he expects respect without doing the work to earn it. Respect isn't inherited, it's built. And while that line, no child support, no opinion, was blunt, it was also honest. It came from a place of years of silence, of being unwanted, of being treated like a secret. This wasn't just about a romance book. It was about the audacity of someone who was absent, trying to show up and parent only when it's convenient. So, was the writer the asshole? In my opinion, no. Sometimes the truth is harsh, but that doesn't make it wrong. And in this case, the writer wasn't lashing out. They were setting a boundary, one that's been a long time coming. What do you think? Is it wrong to shut someone down when they've only just started showing up after years of absence? Or was this a moment of well-deserved honesty? Drop your thoughts below, because this one hits hard. Am I the asshole for outing my closeted uncle after he shamed me for being gay at a family dinner? Let's talk about what it means to be humiliated at your own dinner table. The writer, a 25-year-old man, Came out 5 years ago, 20 years old and brave enough to stand in front of his family and say, "This is who I am." That takes courage, real courage. And for the most part, their family responded with what we all hope for: support, acceptance, peace. But not everyone was on board. There was Uncle Dave. Dave, 45, has always been off about it. You know the type. He hides behind old school masculinity, tosses casual jabs like they're harmless jokes. "You don't have to act so gay." Or the classic, "Back in my day, men kept that to themselves." Comments like that may seem small at first, but over time, they chip away at you. They build a wall between you and the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. And when those jabs come from someone with authority, with age, with influence within the family, it hits harder. It sits with you. And yet, the writer did what so many queer people learn to do. They let it slide again and again until last week. The scene, a family dinner. One of those gatherings where you're supposed to feel safe, full, and maybe even a little nostalgic. But instead of warmth, the air turned cold the moment Dave opened his mouth. He didn't just stop at passive time. He launched into a full-blown tirade about pride parades, calling them perverts wanting attention. He ranted about what real men do, how they don't flaunt it. That's not dinner conversation. That's targeted shame. And the worst part, he knew exactly who he was talking about. The writer, finally reaching a breaking point, called him out. "You're being homophobic." And Dave, smug, said the kind of thing that makes your blood boil. "Why can't you just be normal?" Normal. That word has haunted generations of queer people, as if existing outside someone else's idea of normal makes you wrong, defective, less than. Dave threw it out like it was just a casual opinion, but the damage that word carries, that runs deep. So the writer snapped. Now, this is where the guilt creeps in. The part where you wonder, did I go too far? Because the writer had been holding on to a truth about Dave. See, the signs had been there. The overly curious fixation on the writer's dating life, the little contradictions. And yes, the Grindr profile, the one with the unmistakable tattoo and a not-so-subtle photo. The writer never said anything, never used it, never weaponized it, until that moment. That's rich coming from a guy who's on Grindr every weekend. How's that working out for you? It was like someone pulled the rug out from under the entire table. Silence. Then a gasp from Dave's wife. She had no idea. Dave turned pale, knocked over his wine glass, and left. Just like that. Later, the writer got a text from their mom, not asking if they were okay, not checking in, just one sentence: "You humiliated him. Was that necessary?" That's the part that stings, because for years the writer was on the receiving end of humiliation, of shame, of subtle and not so subtle digs. And when they finally said something, when they finally pushed back, they became the villain. Now the family is split. Some say it was about time someone put Dave in his place. Others say outing him was wrong. And let's be honest, outing someone, no matter the context, is dangerous. It can be traumatic. It can have real consequences. That part is real. But so is this. People weaponizing their own internal shame to harm others. That's what Dave did. His cruelty wasn't random. It was projection. He was trying to erase in others what he couldn't accept in himself. And the writer was just the closest, easiest target. So, was it wrong to out him? That's where this story gets heavy, because it's not black and white. The writer knows the risks. They understand what outing someone means. They didn't do it out of malice. They did it in the heat of pain, after years of being on the receiving end. Sometimes a person reaches a point where silence is no longer survival, it's suffocation. And when the air gets thin, people say things they've been holding back for years. So is the writer the asshole? Not to me. They're human, hurt, pushed to a breaking point by a man who never hesitated to publicly humiliate them, but couldn't handle the same in return. Sometimes the truth doesn't come out in the quiet moments. Sometimes it explodes. Loud, messy, irreversible. And maybe that's what needed to happen. So now I ask you, was this justice served too late, or a line crossed in the name of pride? Let me know your thoughts, because this one is personal. Am I the asshole for telling my wife not to come to my ex-wife's funeral to support my daughter because my daughter doesn't want her there? Sometimes the hardest choices we make as parents aren't the ones that look good in the moment. They're the ones that hurt, that leave someone disappointed, even angry, but are made with the long game in mind. This is one of those moments. The writer is a father, a man navigating grief, divorce, and the wreckage of a complicated co-parenting history. He shares a 14-year-old daughter with his ex-wife, an ex-wife who just passed away a few days ago. The air is still heavy, the pain is still raw. And now, amid all that, the writer has to make a decision that might fracture his current marriage or cause lasting damage to his daughter's trust. Let's go back a little. The marriage between the writer and his ex wasn't perfect. It ended bitterly. There was no infidelity, but there was hurt, disappointment, broken promises, and as often happens in messy divorces, the lines between adult conflict and parenting blurred. The writer remarried, but his ex-wife, intentionally or not, began alienating their daughter from the new woman in his life, his current wife. And it worked. For years now, his daughter has been distant, emotionally shut off from her stepmom. She's been firm, cold even, not vicious, but clear. She doesn't want a relationship with this woman. And then tragedy struck. The mother she loved, the woman who raised her, even with flaws, died. And now the world has tilted. That kind of grief isn't logical. It's primal, chaotic. It doesn't matter how rocky the parenting was or what mistakes were made. When a child loses a parent, the emotional walls go up, and anyone who ever stood in opposition to that parent, they become the enemy. So when the stepmother said she wanted to attend the funeral to support the daughter screamed. Not just words, a scream. One of those deep, guttural cries that can only come from pain. That's not just about not wanting someone at a funeral. That's a cry of, don't take this from me. Because to this girl, it would feel like an intrusion, like her mother's space, her mother's memory was being violated by someone she believes never cared for her. And look, the stepmom isn't evil. Let's be fair, she wants to be seen. She wants to be the bigger person, to show up, to be there for a daughter who has never truly let her in. Maybe she's hoping this moment, this gesture, might be the thing that softens the wall between them. That's real, that's human, but it's not what the daughter needs right now, not even close. The writer stepped in. He told his wife not to come, not because he doesn't believe she's trying, not because he doesn't value her role, but because his daughter is barely holding on and pushing past her clearly stated boundaries now when she's grieving, lost, and vulnerable could cause a wound that takes years to heal, if it ever does. It wasn't easy. The wife was hurt. She said she felt unsupported, that she feared the daughter would one day say, "Why weren't you there for me?" And the writer acknowledged that. That fear is valid. But he also said something important. Respecting someone's boundaries is a kind of support too. It's subtle. It doesn't come with flowers or comforting hugs. It doesn't come with photo ops at funerals, but it says, "I hear you. I'm not going to force my presence on you when you've made it clear that's not what you want." And that, in the long run, could mean everything. There's another piece here. Grief distorts everything. The writer's daughter is now facing the kind of loss that makes people canonize the dead. Suddenly, all the flaws are blurred, all the tension with her mother forgotten. Now there's just a gaping hole, and anything that feels like disrespect, that absence, becomes unforgivable. The writer even consulted their long-standing family therapist, someone who's seen this dynamic unfold over time. And the therapist agreed. Supporting the daughter means staying away, at least for now. Still, the wife was devastated. She accused the writer of not supporting her, of discouraging her from being a good stepmom. But here's the thing. Being a good stepparent sometimes means stepping back. Not to retreat, not to abandon, but to make room for the pain that was there before you. To honor the mother that came before you. That doesn't mean she'll never have a relationship with the daughter. It doesn't mean this moment defines her forever, but this funeral, it's not about her. It's about a teenage girl saying goodbye to the only mother she's ever known, the only one she's ever allowed into her heart. So, is the writer the asshole? Not even close. He's a man caught in the middle of two women he cares about, one gone, one grieving, and one trying to do the right thing the wrong way. He's not picking sides. He's protecting a child from further hurt. He's making the uncomfortable, emotional, thankless decision, because that's what parents do. And to me, that's love. Messy, complicated, but real. So, what do you think? Should support always mean showing up in person? Or does respecting grief sometimes mean knowing when to stay away? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This one's got layers. Am I the asshole for refusing to cancel my birthday trip because my boyfriend's mom planned a family dinner the same day? Some stories start with conflict. Others begin with a quiet kind of exhaustion, the kind that builds over a long, rough year, the kind that makes you crave peace more than celebration. That's where the writer finds herself. She's 20, still young, yes, but not immune to the weight life can throw at you when you least expect it. And after everything she's been through this year, all she wanted was a little space, a break. Not from anyone in particular, but for herself. So she planned a simple birthday getaway with 2 close friends, no wild parties, no extravagant destinations, just a quiet cabin, some wine, a little hiking, something that felt like breathing again. And she did everything right. She booked it over a month ago. She told her boyfriend, he's 23, and he seemed happy for her, supportive, the kind of partner who smiles as, you deserve it. But then, enter the plot twist. A few days before the trip, a text buzzes in from his mother, simple but loaded. Dinner at our place Saturday night, everyone expected. No questions, no heads up, just a demand, wrapped in the kind of family obligation that's hard to argue with without being labeled the bad guy. Her boyfriend, now caught between 2 commitments, turns to the writer and asks if she can cancel her trip, or at least cut it short, for his mother's last-minute plans. And here's where the tension thickens. The writer respectfully, calmly says no. This trip wasn't just a vacation. It wasn't about skipping out on a dinner. It was a birthday she'd been holding on to like a lifeline, a chance to reconnect with herself and with friends who showed up for her when the year tried to break her. Why should she be the one to bend? That's when everything shifted. Her boyfriend, once supportive, turns cold, quiet, accusing her of being disrespectful to his family, of choosing friends over people who really care. And the guilt trip didn't stop there. His sister chimes in too, with a passive-aggressive little jab. It's not that hard to show up for family. But here's the question no one seems to be asking. What about showing up for yourself? Why is it that women, especially young women, are expected to drop everything at the drop of a hat for their partner's family? Why is your joy considered optional, while everyone else's plans are sacred? Let's be real, this wasn't about disrespect. The writer didn't say she hates his family, she didn't refuse to ever attend a dinner, she just wanted this one weekend. Her birthday, a plan that had been in place long before his mom's group text, and that word, expected, carries so much weight. It assumes you don't have a life outside of someone else's calendar, that your autonomy is negotiable. The boyfriend could have stood by her. He could have said, hey mom, she's had this planned, let's do something another day. That's what partnership looks like. That's what respect sounds like. But instead, he turned her celebration into a test of loyalty. And now, he's sulking, silent, making her feel like she's the problem. But let's call it what it is, emotional manipulation wrapped in family values. So, am I the asshole for sticking to my birthday plans? No, you're not. You made your plans, communicated them, and followed through. You're not responsible for someone else's lack of planning or their expectations of instant compliance. You didn't choose friends over family. You chose yourself over being guilted. And there's nothing selfish about that. In fact, it's the kind of self-respect more people need to learn. But hey, what do you think? Should the writer have compromised for the sake of family unity, or was she right to protect the peace she planned for herself? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to tell me, what would you have done if it were your birthday on the line? Am I the asshole for telling my parents I'm not a band-aid for their grief, and they can't slot me into the wanted place just because their favorite child is dead at my sister's funeral? Grief. It does strange things to people. It twists and bends logic, breaks old patterns, and sometimes Just sometimes it drags the truth, raw and unfiltered, to the surface in a way that cannot be ignored. But sometimes it also becomes a mask, one that covers a history too ugly for comfort. This story begins not with a death, but with years of slow, invisible pain, the kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises but buries itself in silence. The writer, an 18-year-old boy, grew up in a house where he was not simply ignored, he was erased. He had a younger sister, 16 years old, and though they shared blood, they did not share warmth, not because of anything she did, but because of what their parents didn't do. They chose her. Not metaphorically, not by accident. They chose her again and again. She became the sun around which everything else revolved, while the writer drifted farther and farther into shadow. He was pushed aside, forgotten, and finally discarded. By the time he was taken in by his maternal grandparents at 17, his parents had already declared their disappointment in him, told him they were ashamed to call him their son. Why? Because he wouldn't perform the love they demanded he give to his sister. Now fast forward to the funeral. The sister is gone. And suddenly, after more than 10 years without a hug, his parents reach for him. With arms that once rejected him, with grief that now needs something to cling to. But the writer, he's not a prop. He's not a consolation prize for their shattered reality. His maternal grandparents insisted he attend the funeral, for respect, for family, for support. He went not for his parents, but for the people who had, at one point, tried to rescue him from the silence he was raised in. But once there, the performance began. His parents changed overnight, acting as if the last decade hadn't happened, as if he hadn't been told to his face that he was a disappointment, a disgrace. Now suddenly, they wanted him at their side, in the front row, hugging, crying, grieving together. He refused. He would not sit with them. He would not play along. And when they clung to him after the service, desperate to fill the hole left behind, he snapped. Not cruelly, not out of malice, but out of years of pent-up clarity. He said it, "I'm not a band-aid for your grief. You don't get to slot me into the wanted child place just because your favorite is gone." That truth cut deeper than any whisper of sympathy ever could. His grandparents, those who once took him in, turned on him in an instant. Outrage, disgust. He was now the villain. They kicked him out for telling the truth, for saying the quiet part out loud, and that should have been the end of it. But the calls kept coming, the texts, demands for apologies, condemnation for his evil ways. That's what they called it. Evil. For not pretending. For not soothing his parents' grief with a version of himself that never truly existed in their eyes. And so the writer left. He went to live with his paternal grandparents, people who had seen the damage, spoken about it, and were silenced for doing so. With them, he found understanding, safety, but also loss. He couldn't finish high school. His life was uprooted once again. But here's the thing. Sometimes survival comes at a cost, and sometimes telling the truth hurts. So let's ask the real question here. Am I the asshole for what I said at the funeral? For saying, after years of being ignored, abandoned, and replaced, that I would not be used as an emotional crutch now? No. You are not the asshole. You were the truth teller in a room full of people who preferred fiction. And truth, when it finally arrives, is rarely welcomed with open arms. You didn't lash out in cruelty. You drew a boundary. You rejected a role that was never yours to begin with. You refused to be a stand-in for someone you were never allowed to be close to. Grief is not a free pass to rewrite history. Your parents don't get to act like the past never happened. You cannot erase a lifetime of rejection with one hug at a funeral. You didn't destroy that family dynamic. They did. You just finally said it out loud. So what do you think? Was the writer wrong for his timing, or was this the only moment he was finally allowed to speak? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes it's not just about who's grieving. It's about who's been grieving all along. Am I the asshole for not letting my wife keep her old habits after we had a baby? Here we go. A quiet Easter Sunday, just a dad and his toddler daughter at home, and a whole lot of thoughts bubbling under the surface. Thoughts about responsibility, about fairness, about what it really means to build a life together. The writer, 39 years old, isn't new to parenting. He's already raising 2 children from a previous marriage, now 12 and 10, and now he's added a new little one to the mix, a 1-year-old daughter with his current wife, who's 34. Now let's be clear, this isn't about hating on someone for having hobbies. In fact, the writer's wife is passionate. She's active, she's social, she lives. Her hobbies are serious ones too: dog breeding, horseback riding, sometimes travel related to those. She has friends, she's dedicated, and she loves what she does. But once a baby enters the picture, life has to change, doesn't it? And that's where the tension lies, because before the baby arrived, there were conversations. Honest, grown-up conversations where the writer brought up concerns, mainly that her lifestyle, while exciting and fulfilling, might not work once they had a child. He made it clear. He wasn't trying to shut her life down. He was trying to build one together. She promised she understood, said she'd adjust, said she was on board. And then, that promise began to fade. After their daughter was born, his wife continued to leave for weekend trips, hobby excursions, long drives with friends, even at 3 a.m, all while the writer found himself juggling a toddler and 2 other kids on his own. No coordination, no shared planning, just a "hey, I'm going. Figure it out." One incident that stands out like a bruise: Easter Sunday. The writer's wife spends the entire day on a road trip with a friend, taking pictures of dogs in the forest. No request, no conversation, just a heads up. Meanwhile, he's home, rocking their baby girl, writing this post to strangers on the internet while quietly wondering, is this what marriage is supposed to feel like? He's not trying to stop her passions. He never was. But he is asking for partnership. He's asking for balance, for communication, for the kind of teamwork that makes a family more than just 2 adults with shared responsibilities. And sure, it sounds like it was written from a place of frustration, because it was. But in an update, the writer does acknowledge what she does do. Mornings with the baby, nighttime wake-ups, bedtime routines. And that's important, because this isn't about slamming someone. It's about trying to find a middle ground between individual freedom and shared responsibility. So let's get down to it. Am I the asshole for asking my wife to adjust her lifestyle after having a child? No. You are a parent, and parenting is not a part-time job. It's a relentless, all-consuming, deeply rewarding, often exhausting, joint effort. When one partner continues to live as if their time belongs only to themselves, the other ends up carrying the weight alone. And that's not just hard, that's unsustainable. You're not saying she can't have her hobbies, you're saying they need to be balanced with the needs of your child and of your family. You're asking for planning, for discussion, for the kind of communication that says, I value our life together enough to not just inform you of my plans, but to make them with you. That's not controlling. That's what family is supposed to be. Now, sure, some might say you're too rigid, that parenting doesn't mean giving up everything, and they're right. But parenting does mean compromise. It means realizing your time isn't just yours anymore. It's shared. And you're not wrong to feel like that hasn't been happening. And that line you dropped near the end? I sometimes feel like we are just roommates who sleep together and have a child together rather than an actual family. That's not bitterness. That's loneliness. That's what it feels like to carry too much of something that was supposed to be shared. You're not asking for her to disappear into motherhood. You're asking her to show up with you, to walk beside you, not ahead, not behind, but as partners. So, what do you think? Is the writer drawing a reasonable line, or does this come off as resentment disguised as practicality? Let me know in the comments, because the truth is, parenting can break people apart just as easily as it brings them together. And sometimes the hardest part is just trying to be heard. Am I the asshole for calling out my mom for trying on the engagement ring I got for my girlfriend? This one's not loud. There's no screaming match, no broken dishes, no slammed doors. But don't be fooled. This is one of those moments that sneaks up on you. A quiet boundary crossed and a lingering feeling you just can't shake. It was Easter Sunday, a day that's supposed to be warm, comforting, family, food, tradition. The writer was with their family, just trying to enjoy the gathering, even though their girlfriend couldn't make it due to work. But there was still something exciting to share, something deeply personal, something that had been sitting heavy in the writer's pocket for days. An engagement ring. Yeah. That moment. The nerves, the anticipation, the silent thrill of knowing your entire life might change in just one question. The writer was holding that in their hands, literally. And so, surrounded by family, they decided to share it. Not the proposal, not the moment, but just a preview, a peek into what's coming. They weren't tossing it around the table or passing it around like a party favor. No, the ring stayed in its box, safe, respected, handled with care. But the moment happened. The kind you don't expect, and once it hits you, you can't unfeel it. The writer's mother took the ring out of the box. Okay, that's fine. Curious fingers, a closer look, understandable. It's shiny, sentimental, beautiful probably. But then, she slipped it onto her ring finger. Not for a second. Not for a quick glance. No, she put it on, stood up, and started to walk away to show it off to other people. And in that moment, something just shifted. That ring, meant for the writer's girlfriend, meant for one specific person in the world, was now on someone else's hand. Not in admiration, not in support, but as if it belonged to her. And here's the thing, it's not just about the ring, it's about what that ring means. That tiny piece of metal carries the weight of a promise, a future, a deeply personal step between two people. The fact that the writer's mom treated it like an accessory to flaunt at a family party, that's where the problem starts. The writer understandably stepped in, took the ring back, said something, not in rage, not in a dramatic outburst, just enough to reclaim a moment that never should have been taken in the first place. But the reaction? His mom got upset. And now the writer is left here wondering, did I overreact? Did I make it weird? Was I too protective of something that hasn't even been given yet? Let's talk about it. No, writer. You did not overreact. Your reaction was quiet, reasonable, protective, yes, but not possessive. Because protecting a symbol of one of the biggest decisions of your life, that's not being controlling, that's being emotionally connected to what it means. Your mom's intentions may not have been malicious. Maybe she was just excited, maybe she wanted to feel included, but the way she acted, putting it on her own finger, walking away with it, it crossed a line. It took something intimate and turned it into a spectacle. And it's okay to be hurt by that. It's okay to stand up for the significance of the moment you're building. Because a proposal isn't just about a question, it's about the love behind it, the respect that surrounds it, and the effort you put into making it special. Honestly, if someone tried on my engagement ring like it was part of a dress-up session, I'd be shaken too. Not because I'm obsessed with the ring itself, but because that kind of gesture, no matter how innocent it seems, can feel like someone stepping into a space that wasn't meant for them. This ring isn't just jewelry, it's a private conversation in a velvet box, a future held together by tiny, glittering stones. And until it's slipped onto the finger of the person it was meant for, no one else has any business wearing it, even for a second. So what do you think? Was the writer justified, or was it just a harmless mom moment blown out of proportion? Let me know in the comments. And hey, if you're planning on proposing soon, maybe keep that box a little tighter in your pocket until the moment is really right. Because sometimes, the smallest moments carry the heaviest meanings. Am I the asshole for not waiting for my stepkids to be with us before doing something with my biological children? Parenting isn't a neatly drawn map. It's a constant shuffle between emotions, responsibilities, and unspoken expectations. But throw in a blended family, shared custody, and a storm of opinions from every direction. Suddenly, you're navigating a minefield where even the smallest step can set off an explosion. The writer is a mother of 2 young children, ages 4 and 2, with her husband. That alone is a handful. But they also share a home, a life, with 2 older stepchildren from her husband's previous marriage. The stepkids, aged 10 and 9, are with them every other week. A rhythm, a pattern, but also a space where boundaries blur and emotions get complicated. Now here's the part that twists the knife. The stepkids have been acting up. Not just regular kid chaos. No, this is targeted, defiant, especially when the writer is left alone with them. They test limits, they talk back, they hurl the classic "you're not my mom" line like a dagger, sharp and personal. They tune her out, disregard her words, push her patience. Her husband is trying to address it. He's in her corner, which matters. But the ex-wife, she's made it crystal clear. She doesn't see a problem. The disrespect, the boundary pushing, not her concern, not her issue. So all of the emotional labor lands squarely on the writer's shoulders. And here's where things really unravel. Despite all of this, the chaos, the exhaustion, the writer still tries to give her children joy. On the weeks when the stepkids are with their mom, she takes her own kids to little outings. A book fair here, a library event there, a movie, a toy shopping trip. Nothing extravagant, nothing flashy, just small sparks of happiness. Little things, moments. But now, those moments are being painted as acts of exclusion. Enter the sister-in-law, judgmental, loud, and very, very opinionated. She's decided the writer is punishing her stepchildren, not directly, but through joy. That by giving her biological children happy experiences when the stepkids aren't around, she's deliberately leaving them out as some form of subtle revenge for their bad behavior. Let's sit with that for a second. The accusation isn't about what the writer did, but what she didn't wait for, the joy she didn't put on hold, the idea that the happiness of two children should be delayed, stifled, held back, just to avoid hurting feelings that already exist in a fractured, complicated dynamic. And to make matters worse, the Sayil, who, mind you, isn't in the house dealing with the screaming, the tantrums, the subtle emotional jabs, accuses the writer of living it up with her real kids when the fake ones are away with their real mom. Let's pause right there. Fake kids? That language alone should disqualify her opinion. Because if you can throw around terms like that, you're not here to help. You're here to judge, to stir the pot, to question someone else's parenting when you don't carry their burden. The writer tries to explain. She does include the stepkids. She does do things with them. But she also refuses to let her younger children live in limbo, spending every other week doing nothing just because their older siblings aren't around. She's not punishing anyone. She's trying to raise two toddlers who deserve joy that isn't rationed out in a courtroom custody schedule. And what does Seal say? That the writer should have waited, that the two toddlers should just wait. Wait for what? Wait until their siblings feel like listening? Wait until the ex-wife agrees to co-parent like an adult? Wait until judgment from relatives stops raining down? The truth is, the writer is stuck between being a mother and a step-parent and doing her best to respect both roles. And now she's here, wondering if she's wrong for not pressing pause on parenting her own children so no one else feels left out. So let's call it like it is. No, writer. You are not the asshole. You're not malicious. You're not using joy as a weapon. You're not sitting your toddlers down and saying, hey, let's go to the fair while your step-siblings suffer. You're simply living life, teaching your kids to embrace the moments that come. And that's what good parenting looks like. Your step-kids need love, yes. They need structure, support, and consistency. But your toddlers, they need that too. And putting their childhood on hold every other week to appease someone else's perception of fairness, that's not balance. That's erasure. And as for Sil, maybe she should spend a week in your shoes before casting stones. Because it's easy to criticize from a distance. It's harder to parent with grace while being pulled in every direction. So, to the viewers, what would you do in the writer's position? Should joy come with a schedule? Or are blended families about learning how to celebrate love in whatever shape it takes, even if it's uneven sometimes? Let me know below. And if you're part of a blended family, just know you're not alone in the mess. You're not alone in the love either. Am I the asshole for moving out at 17 when I was helping provide for my family because my brother got my girlfriend pregnant and my parents are supporting them? There are betrayals that hit like lightning, sudden, violent, unforgiving. And then there are the ones that simmer, quietly, slowly, eating away at you from the inside until you don't even recognize the life you're standing in. The writer is 17, a teenager by age, but an adult by burden. Since he was 13, he's been contributing to the household finances, not because it was expected of him, but because life forced his hand. Struggling parents, a home stretched too thin, he stepped in, sacrificed his teenage years, no wild parties, no carefree summers, just work, support, responsibility. And then everything fell apart. His girlfriend of 2 years, someone he trusted, someone he probably saw a future with, tells him she's pregnant. But they'd never been intimate. Not once. So instantly his mind spirals into the worst. Was she assaulted? Was something done to her? But no. No dark shadow, no unknown predator. The truth was even uglier in its familiarity. She cheated with his brother, his 16-year-old brother. And just like that, the world flipped. The kind of rage that swells up in moments like this, it's not the dramatic movie type, it's cold, it's physical, it shakes your bones. The writer admits it. He almost lost it. He nearly attacked his brother, and not out of some tragic love hurts kind of heartbreak. No, this was rage carved from betrayal, from watching everything he trusted, everything he built, crumble at the feet of someone who shared his blood. If not for his grandfather stepping in, he might have made a choice that would have changed his life forever. Because as much as this pain burned, he still had control. He still had dignity. But what really stings, the part that cuts deeper than the cheating, is what came after. His parents, the people he worked to support. The people who leaned on him when bills piled up and life got tough. They looked him in the eyes and said they'd support his brother and his now ex. They stood behind them. And when the writer drew his line, when he said he wouldn't be a part of it, they looked at him like he was the one who had done something wrong. He didn't scream. He didn't make a scene. He packed up and moved in with his grandparents, people who had always side-eyed how much pressure was dumped onto him, people who finally said out loud what he must have felt deep inside. It was never your job. That sentence alone, it was never your job. Not your job to raise the family. Not your job to be the emotional punching bag. Not your job to clean up your brother's mess while being treated like a villain for walking away. The ex reached out, of course. But the writer shut it down with dignity, not with insults or cruelty, just a clear, final boundary. Leave me alone. Forget I exist. And his brother? Blocked, ignored, erased. The trust is gone, and the silence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. The writer has reshaped his life around avoidance, walking the long way home, turning the other direction, building space brick by brick, and yet his parents are still waiting for the responsible son to come back, the one they could always count on, the one who carried weight that should have never been his to carry. But what about now that he refuses to enable the dysfunction? Now that he dares to live for himself? Suddenly he's not good anymore. Other family members chime in, of course. The usual chorus of, he's still your brother, they're your parents, you're being extreme. But where were these voices when he was clocking in hours to help put food on the table? When he was putting his own life on hold to pick up where others fell short? Let's be honest. A 17-year-old should be planning for prom, not escaping a collapsing household built on betrayal. So, is the writer the asshole? No, he's not. He's a 17-year-old kid who got stabbed in the back by the people he trusted most, and instead of self-destructing, he walked away with his dignity intact. Sometimes the most grown-up thing you can do is leave. To everyone watching, what would you do if your entire foundation shattered overnight? Would you stay out of duty, or would you walk away to protect what's left of your sanity? Drop your thoughts below, and to the writer, if you're out there listening, you didn't fail anyone. They failed you. And the fact that you're still standing speaks volumes. Am the asshole for telling my girlfriend no? Ryder has been in a relationship for a few months. It's new, it's fresh, but already there's been turbulence, fights, misunderstandings, and yet somehow that bond remains strong. That feeling of, I can't go a day without talking to you kind of love, the kind that pulls two people together even when they keep bumping heads. But beneath the laughter, the sleepovers, the spontaneous dates, there's a tension growing, and it's all boiling down to one thing. Ryder is starting to feel like his word doesn't mean much when he says no. Now, he's not being unreasonable. He's not asking for space in some abstract, disappearing kind of way. He's just tired. Literally, bone deep, mentally drained. I've given all I can give today, tired. Let's rewind for context. For her birthday, Ryder didn't just show up. He showed out. A full road trip to Miami, booked a suite, planned everything around her. Every dinner, every detail, handpicked to make her feel loved. He didn't hold back, even when the trip ended with a little spat after she asked him to help pack while he was already winding down. He still helped. Then they talked it out like adults. They set an agreement. If things feel overwhelming, just speak up. Communication would be their solution. But as we'll see, that agreement was more fragile than he thought. Fast forward a couple of weeks. They're lounging at home after a long day, and she asks for a glass of water. Simple, right? But here's the thing. Ryder is exhausted. He's always been the one to jump up, to fetch things, to be that doting boyfriend. But this time, he hesitates. Just this once, he asks if she can get it herself. That's all. Not out of pettiness, not out of laziness, just tired. Later, he gets up to use the bathroom, and since he's already on his feet, he brings her the water without being asked. Thoughtful, right? Apparently not. She taps his arm with the glass, a subtle cue to put it down for her. He doesn't react. She taps again, this time with a little grunt. Still, he's drained. And when he blurts out, "I'm good, bro." Yeah, okay, maybe not the best phrasing, but it wasn't meant to be cruel. Just an exhausted defense mechanism. The fight erupts. Again, apologies are exchanged, emotions simmer down, but a pattern starts to show. Then there's the retainer incident. She's fallen asleep without brushing or putting it in. Ryder tries, gently, to get her up. When she finally stirs and goes to the bathroom, she asks him to stand beside her while she brushes. A sweet routine, a ritual between lovers. But this time, he just can't. He tells her he's 10 feet away in bed. She's not alone, just brushing her teeth. She gets upset, refuses to brush. They sit in this silent, petty standoff until she eventually gives in. But why did it even get to that point? The emotional exhaustion is stacking. Then comes the night he lets her and her friend hang out at his place while he's working late. He's excited to see her after. She gets home, they talk, things are good. But when she asks to FaceTime and he says no because he's already in bed and needs to be up early, another spark. She hangs up angry. The next day, Ryder checks in. She's short, distant. And by the time their planned date rolls around, a full itinerary he arranged, tickets in hand, she flakes, says she's just going to go home. He pushes, a little hurt, and she flips it back on him, says he's being nasty, that he ruined it. And just like that, the whole day, the thoughtful date, gone. Now here we are. Ryder is standing at the edge, trying to make sense of it all. He's tired, emotionally tapped out. And all of this because he said no a few times, because he didn't want to get up to throw away a glass, because he didn't stand in the bathroom while she brushed her teeth. She tells him that refusing these little things means he's not doing the bare minimum. But here's what's getting missed in all of this. Ryder isn't asking for a break from the relationship. He's not withdrawing his love. He's just asking for a break for himself, for his body, for his mind. And the truth is, relationships shouldn't run on one person's battery. Yes, showing up matters. Yes, the small things count. But love without empathy turns into obligation. And when your every no is met with anger or guilt, what you're in isn't partnership, it's performance. So am I the asshole for saying no? Let's sit with that. Because at the core of this story, this isn't about water or retainers or FaceTime calls. This is about the balance of effort, about recognizing when one person is giving from a cup that's already empty. No, Ryder, you're not the asshole. You're a boyfriend who loves deeply, who's showing up over and over again and just asking for a moment to breathe. And if that isn't enough, maybe it's time to ask what the bare minimum really means for both of you. Am I the asshole for wanting a loving partner instead of one who cheats? The writer, a 25-year-old woman, has been with her boyfriend for almost 2 years. By all accounts, she describes herself as shy, but it's not just shyness. There's anxiety there too. That anxious knot that tightens in your stomach when you're expected to talk to new people or place your order in a loud, bustling restaurant. It's not about being helpless. It's about being overwhelmed. Her boyfriend, well, he gets it. He doesn't judge. In fact, he's stepped up without hesitation. Whether it's ordering her food or walking into a store so she doesn't have to, he's been that calm, safe presence beside her in a world that often feels too loud. Some might see that as coddling, But for others, that's love, that's comfort, that's someone showing up for you in the little ways that matter most. Fast forward to dinner at Texas Roadhouse, a gathering with friends, her boyfriend, her childhood best friend Vanessa and her husband, and Sarah, a college friend, with her boyfriend. Sounds like a fun night, right? Except not for long. The waiter arrives. Ryder quietly tells her boyfriend what she wants, and he places both their orders. Standard routine. No drama, no issue. But the silence that follows is cut by Sarah's voice, sarcastic, biting. Did you see the way the waiter looked at you? He probably thinks your boyfriend for you because you won't order your own food. Now pause for a second. That wasn't a joke. That was a low blow. A stab that went beneath the surface. Weaponized insecurity disguised as humor. And Ryder? She's stunned. Vanessa, bless her, jumps in immediately and calls it out for what it is. Not okay. But Sarah doesn't stop. No, she circles back again like a dog with a bone. Is he going to feed it to you as well? And when the boyfriend does feed her a bite, jokingly, even throwing in a playful, I'll baby bird it to her if she wants, it just pours gasoline on Sarah's fire. Suddenly, this entire dinner becomes a referendum on Ryder's relationship. Sarah attacks her character, her independence, her career, even her competence as a nurse, someone dedicated to caring for others. The writer tries to defend herself, to explain the difference between professional communication and social anxiety. But it's like talking to a wall. Sarah isn't listening. She's looking for weakness. Now let's take a moment here. You ever been in a situation where someone's picking at you, just poking and jabbing, trying to get a rise? And you let it go over and over, trying to stay composed, until finally that one line hits and you snap? That's exactly what happened here, because when the boyfriend cut up her steak, something he does all the time because she doesn't like the fatty bits, Sarah went off again. That's when the writer, exhausted and frankly fed up, finally fired back. Well, if my boyfriend ordering and cutting my food is worse than a boyfriend who constantly cheats on me, I'll take it. Oof. Cue Sarah storming out. Her boyfriend follows. Later, Ryder gets a message in the group chat. Sarah says she won't be coming around unless she gets an apology. And to that, Ryder says no. She stood up for herself. She didn't insult Sarah's relationship with some blind accusation. She simply pointed out what they all already knew. Because here's the kicker. Sarah talks constantly about her boyfriend cheating. The cheating isn't a secret. It's a pattern, a running joke. Even he jokes about it with the other guys. So really, who crossed the line first? Final thoughts. This isn't a story about food. It's not about who ordered the steak or who held the fork. It's about respect, boundaries, and the quiet sacrifices people make when they love someone with anxiety, someone who struggles with the everyday things most of us take for granted. The writer didn't ask for pity. She asked for peace. And when her friend wouldn't give her that, not once, not twice, but relentlessly throughout the night, she drew her line. It wasn't petty. It was protective. And honestly, if standing up for yourself after being publicly humiliated over and over makes you the villain, then maybe we need to ask who really started the war. So, am I the asshole? Or was that the moment Ryder finally chose herself? You decide. Am I the asshole for leaving my girlfriend at a wedding after she told the bride I used to have a crush on her? This one starts off like your typical rom-com moment. The writer, a 27-year-old guy, gets invited to a wedding. Not just a random one, but a friend from college. They weren't best friends or anything, but close enough to keep in touch through the years. The kind of connection that lingers in a warm, nostalgic way. And yeah, back in college, there was a little harmless flirtation with the bride. Nothing serious, just the kind of youthful crush you outgrow. And that's exactly what the writer did. He moved on, built a life, entered a new relationship, even mentioned that old college crush once in passing to his current girlfriend. Just a lighthearted memory. The kind of thing you share because it's not a big deal anymore. So when the wedding day rolled around, everything seemed perfect. The writer and his girlfriend were dressed up, sipping drinks, sharing smiles, dancing like couples do when the world feels all right for a few hours. He noticed her chatting with the bride at the bar, laughing, looking friendly. No alarms, no red flags, but soon after the bride's demeanor shifted. She started acting off, cold, distant, uncomfortable. And then, like a storm cloud rolling in out of nowhere, one of the bridesmaids pulled the writer aside and said words no one expects to hear. Your girlfriend told the bride you used to be in love with her and that she should watch herself tonight. That's when the mood shattered. The writer was stunned, confused, embarrassed, and maybe a little betrayed. What was supposed to be a peaceful, elegant night turned into a powder keg because his girlfriend had decided to stir the pot at someone else's wedding. So he confronted her, asked her if it was true, and she didn't even deny it. No hesitation, no remorse, just a calm, almost casual, "I thought she deserved to know the history." But what history? There was no history. A college crush isn't a threat, it's a memory. And dragging it out like some buried scandal at another woman's wedding, that's not honesty. That's sabotage. The writer tried to explain how wrong that was, how unnecessary, how deeply inappropriate. But instead of listening, she doubled down, turned it on him, claimed he cared more about the bride's feelings than hers, dismissed his concerns like they were nothing. That's the thing that hits hardest here. It wasn't just what she said. It was how easily she ignored how it made the writer feel, how she refused to see the line she'd crossed, because in her mind, it wasn't about the bride. It was about control, about staking a claim in public, even if it meant planting a seed of doubt on someone's wedding night. So the writer made a choice. He left, got in the car, drove home without her. Was it harsh? Maybe, but sometimes silence says what words can't. And after being humiliated, brushed off, and made to feel like the villain for defending a line that shouldn't have been crossed, maybe silence was all the writer had left. She found a ride home later, but the fallout didn't stop there. Now her friends are texting him saying he humiliated her, that he's a terrible person for leaving her behind. But let's take a breath here. He didn't start this. He didn't create drama. He didn't bring up past crushes like they were weapons. He simply reacted to being caught in a mess someone else decided to create, a mess that could have easily been avoided. And while leaving her behind wasn't ideal, neither was being dragged into unnecessary drama on a day that wasn't even about them. The writer didn't walk away to punish her. He walked away to protect himself from more embarrassment, more disrespect, and more chaos. Was the writer the asshole for leaving? Given the full picture, her words, the setting, the complete disregard for what that moment meant to others, it's hard to say he was wrong. Walking away might have been painful, but staying, that might have hurt even more. Am I the asshole for kicking my fiance's sister out of my wedding? Weddings are supposed to be joyful, a celebration of love, of partnership, of choosing your person and standing side by side as you take on the world together. But for the writer, her wedding day began to unravel long before she ever walked down the aisle. She's 32, engaged to a man named John, and together they've built a life rooted in understanding and respect. And that respect mattered more than most people realize, because the writer didn't come from a kind or gentle past. Her mother, cold, abusive, and cruel, left scars that didn't fade with time. Emotional wounds that still echo, even now. From childhood, the writer endured verbal beatdowns that chipped away at her sense of worth, leaving her in survival mode far too young. So when she turned 18 and went off to college, she made the decision so many never find the strength to make. She went no contact. Cutting off a parent isn't easy. It's not clean. It's not something you do out of spite. It's something you do when the pain outweighs the possibility of peace. And for the writer, it worked. She healed. Slowly, imperfectly, but forward. Therapy became her lifeline. Silence became her safety. And in that quiet space, she found her voice. Then came John. He understood. He never pushed, never tried to play mediator. Even when they had a daughter together, now 2 years old, he respected her decision to keep her mother out of their lives. And that kind of empathy, that's rare. That's love. So when the wedding planning began, it was never a question. Her mother would not be invited. Period. Her fiancé's sister, Stacy, was chosen as her maid of honor. They had a close bond, the kind of relationship that felt like family in a way her own never had. The writer trusted her, felt safe with her, or so she thought. One Sunday, while finalizing the guest list and working on the seating chart, Stacy casually asked where the writer's mother would be sitting. The question landed like a lead weight. "She's not invited," the writer replied, honest and composed. "We don't talk. I don't want her at the wedding." Stacy didn't argue, didn't fight, she went quiet. And the moment passed, or so it seemed. A few days later, the writer gets a call from an unknown number, the kind that makes your stomach flip. She doesn't answer the first time, but when it calls again, she picks up. And just like that, her mother's voice floods the line, crying, rambling, begging, asking why she hadn't been told about the wedding, asking why she wasn't invited. And the writer, with the weight of years pressing on her chest, tells the truth. "You don't need to know. You were abusive. I'm still healing. I don't want a relationship with you." Her mother doesn't accept that, says it's unfair, that what happened years ago shouldn't matter now, that she wants to talk when she comes down for the wedding. Wait, what? The writer tells her she's not invited, but her mother insists she got an invitation. She thought it was from her. That hope in her voice, misplaced and manipulative, stings. And that's when the writer realizes someone went behind her back. When John gets home with Stacy, she asks him first, "Did he send it?" No, he swears he didn't. Then comes the real gut punch. Stacy sent the invitation. She admits it, calmly, like it was some sweet gesture, like she thought seeing her mother at the wedding would lead to some Hallmark reunion, like trauma can be undone with a surprise hug and a piece of cake. But this isn't a movie, and this isn't forgiveness for the audience. This is real. And what Stacy did wasn't thoughtful. It was betrayal dressed up as sentimentality. She knew the history, she knew the pain, and she chose to override the writer's voice, to insert herself where she had no right. So the writer snapped, stripped her of the maid of honor title, kicked her out of the wedding, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Because how can you let someone stand beside you at the altar if they don't even respect your boundaries? Stacy cried, ran to John, tried to make it about herself, but John stood firm. He took the writer's side, fully, without hesitation, and he went a step further. He banned Stacy from the wedding altogether. The fallout was immediate. John's family lit up the phone lines, Thursday, Friday, calling the writer names, saying she was overreacting, that she was being a petty baby, that what Stacy did wasn't a big deal. But here's the thing, it was a big deal. This wasn't about a seating chart. This was about trust, about violating the sacred space of someone's healing journey, about ignoring years of pain for the sake of optics. And when John's mother called to pile on, the writer drew another line in the sand. "If that's how you feel," she said, "you don't have to come either." Click. Was it brutal? Maybe. But sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to burn the bridge that keeps dragging you back into the fire. So, was the writer the asshole? Let's really sit with that. She didn't lash out without cause. She didn't throw a tantrum over something small. She responded to a calculated decision that undermined her autonomy. She stood up for the version of herself that once had no voice, the little girl who was never protected. The young woman who had to claw her way back to emotional safety. And yes, it caused a family rift, but that rift didn't start with her. It started with people thinking they knew better than her about her own pain. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. And if there's one day where a person deserves to feel safe to be surrounded only by those who honor their choices, it's their wedding day. Stacy didn't just invite a guest, she invited a ghost. One the writer buried long ago. And no matter how painful it is to divide a family, some lines are worth defending. Am I the asshole for refusing to apologize for slapping my boyfriend when he smashed our birthday cake to my face? Let's set the stage. It's supposed to be a celebration, a shared birthday, a moment of joy, and on writer's part, a way to honor a major career milestone. We're talking hard-earned success, the kind that demands recognition. And writer? She didn't just show up, she invested. She contributed to the venue, split the cost of the food, got herself glammed up, eyebrows, lashes, hair, the whole deal. This wasn't just a dinner, this was a night of pride, a rare moment where she was finally going to be seen, celebrated, and respected. Enter Charles, writer's boyfriend. Now, let's be fair, he contributed too. He invited his family, paid for the cake, and got her a spice rack that she genuinely appreciated. On paper, it looks like a team effort. But here's where things start to sour. During the celebration, when everyone gathered for the ceremonial cake photo, the vibe was light, joyous. And then it flipped. In a heartbeat, Charles decided to turn the moment into a joke that Ryder clearly didn't consent to. As she held the cake, he lunged forward, trying to shove her face into it. She resisted, and that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. His family began cheering him on, like this was some slapstick sitcom from the 90s. He didn't stop. He arched over her, physically forcing her down until her face was smashed into the cake. Let's pause right here. That's not funny. That's not playful. That's humiliating. That's aggression dressed up as a joke. And the fact that people cheered it on is unsettling. Ryder's friends tried to intervene. Charles kept going, smearing frosting into her hair, and when he came back for round 2, something snapped inside her. She slapped him. In public, with his family watching. And just like that, the narrative flipped. She became the villain in their eyes. Let that sink in. Ryder fled to the restroom, caked in frosting, her outfit ruined. Her hair, done just hours before, was a mess. She looked at herself in the mirror, saw the red and blue stains, the cake on her neck, and realized that the evening she poured so much into was over. And not just over, but stolen. When she returned, Charles's family was stone-faced, silent. She had wronged him. He told her she embarrassed herself by slapping him, that her reaction ruined his family's perception of her. Never mind the fact that he physically humiliated her in front of everyone. It wasn't just about the cake. It was about respect, boundaries, trust. Ryder didn't stay silent. She packed her things, told him he and his guests were on their own, and left. Her friends, blessed their hearts, offered to take her out elsewhere, but she felt too humiliated to go. They ended up reimbursing her for the night, not because she asked, but because they saw her. They understood. Charles later paid for part of the bill, including a cleaning fee. That should have been the end of it. But then came the guilt tripping. He said she never loved him, that she ruined the night, that his mother, who's allegedly battling depression, felt humiliated by the slap. He wanted Ryder to apologize, not to him, but to his mother. Let's make one thing clear. No one's saying that slapping someone is ideal. But in that moment, after being manhandled, smeared with cake, and laughed at, Ryder's reaction was human, not calculated, not cruel, reflexive. She told Charles the truth. That night showed her the kind of future she'd have with him. A partner who prioritizes a laugh over her dignity, who performs for his family at her expense, who gaslights her afterward. And that's when she did something brave, something many never managed to do. She ended it. Now he's spinning the story, saying she overreacted, that it was just a joke. But the truth is, it was a joke at her expense, and the kind that lingers far after the frosting's wiped away. So, is Ryder the asshole for refusing to apologize? Absolutely not. She didn't ruin the birthday. She didn't humiliate anyone. She simply refused to tolerate being disrespected in front of a crowd, especially on a night meant to honor her. She made herself clear. She blocked him. She walked away. And sometimes, that's the only move you can make when someone shows you who they really are. This wasn't about cake. This was about control. And Ryder, for the first time in that entire night, took it back. Am I the asshole for beating up my friend I caught sleeping with my girlfriend of 3.5 years? There's a certain kind of betrayal that doesn't just break your heart, it shatters your entire reality. And Ryder, he didn't just get stabbed in the back. He got blindsided, body slammed, and emotionally gutted in the most grotesque way possible. Ryder is 36. He had a girlfriend he loved, 3.5 years deep, and a best friend, 10 years. That's not just some casual buddy from work. That's a decade of trust, laughter, late-night talks, shared secrets, inside jokes. That's someone who probably knew the exact day Ryder met his girlfriend. Someone who smiled in his face while laying the foundation for betrayal behind his back. And then, boom. That movie scene you always think is over-the-top fiction, that no way this happens in real-life nightmare, it became his reality. He walked in and there it was, the woman he loved being intimate with the man he considered family. No warning, no suspicion, just shock. Raw, vicious, unforgettable shock. Let's not pretend we know how we'd react in that moment. It's not something you train for. It's not something you're ready to process. You just go blank, and your body moves before your brain can catch up. Ryder says he beat the hell out of his friend. Not a bar fight, not two drunk dudes swinging in a parking lot. This was rage, emotional violence born from betrayal so deep that words couldn't touch it. His friend didn't even fight back, didn't try to explain, didn't make excuses. He took it because he knew. He knew he'd crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Ryder didn't lay a finger on his now ex, but he did curse her out. Because how could he not? How do you stand in a room where the walls have just collapsed and not scream? The person you trusted with your heart and the one you trusted with your loyalty, tearing your world apart in tandem. But here's where it gets even more complicated and painfully human. After the dust settled, Ryder didn't gloat. He didn't feel victorious. He felt off because his friend didn't fight back. He just took the hits. And that made the violence feel one-sided. Like Ryder wasn't just betrayed, he was turned into something he's not. Now he's second-guessing everything. Not the betrayal, not the heartbreak, but himself. And that's what betrayal does. It doesn't just hurt you in the moment, it makes you question who you were in that moment. The rage, the fists, the instinct to lash out when your soul is on fire. In the edit, Ryder tries to make sense of the damage. Nosebleed. Black eye, no broken bones, no lasting harm, at least not physical. But emotionally, this man is fractured. He's trying to sort through adrenaline, grief, confusion, and guilt, not because he thinks his friend didn't deserve something, but because he's grappling with who it turned him into. He didn't go there looking for violence. He wasn't the kind of guy who wanted to hurt anyone. But that betrayal, that violation, it flipped a switch. And even now, he's unsure if that switch can ever be turned back off. To his credit, Ryder knows violence isn't the answer. He even says it. Assault is a crime. It's wrong. And he didn't do this to feel like a big man. He's asking for clarity because he doesn't trust himself right now. That alone tells you everything about his character. As for the people involved, gone. No contact, no possible return. He doesn't need Reddit to tell him that. But what he does need, what so many people need after betrayal, is to know, does one moment of violence in the middle of a heartbreak you never saw coming make you the villain? Let's be honest, Ryder isn't proud. He's not asking for applause, he's not looking for revenge stories or tough guy validation. He's trying to pick up the shards of who he thought he was, of the life he thought he had, of the people he thought he knew. So is he the asshole? No, he's human. Messy, flawed, heartbroken, and human. This story isn't about violence. It's about the aftermath of betrayal, and how even when you feel totally justified in your pain, that pain still doesn't come without consequence. And when you're the one left standing in the ruins, it's not always about what they did to you, but about what it made you do. Am I the asshole for refusing to treat my ex's sort of girlfriend like another parent to my unborn babies and sitting down with them to lay out the facts? Let's be clear right from the start. This isn't just some messy love triangle. This is a woman, Ryder, carrying twins, trying to navigate a minefield of betrayal, blurred boundaries, and emotional chaos, while two people play pretend with the idea of parenthood like it's some couple's activity pack. Ryder is 25, pregnant, with twins. And the father? A man she gave nearly a decade of her life to. Almost 10 years, growing up together, sharing everything, building what she believed was a stable foundation. Until just 11 weeks into her pregnancy, barely out of the first trimester, still adjusting to the shock of becoming a mom to 2 lives, he sat her down to confess he had feelings for Amy. Amy, the 24-year-old who wasn't even his girlfriend, but a friends with benefits fling connected to one of his best friends. And if that doesn't already feel like a punch to the gut, wait, it gets worse. He said they shouldn't stay together just for the babies, that they'd work it out. And to Ryder's credit, she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She gave him the truth right back. She wasn't sticking around for someone halfway out the door with one foot in Amy's bed. Whether it was emotional or physical, it didn't matter. A betrayal is a betrayal. And Ryder made one thing crystal clear. She was done. And just like clockwork, her ex and Amy ended up together. No surprise there. But then came the part that's always the most infuriating. He suddenly had regrets, wanted to be around, missed her, missed the life they had. But Ryder, she listened for a week, gave him the space to say his piece, and then shut the door. Firmly. There was no going back. And that decision, that was power. That was clarity in the middle of emotional chaos. But the chaos didn't end. Oh no, because now we've got Amy in the mix, inserting herself like a third parent, trying to play mommy to babies that aren't even here yet, offering baby name ideas, asking to go shopping together, even suggesting a joint baby shower, like there's some Pinterest-blended family fantasy. Let's pause right here. Ryder is under no obligation, none, to entertain any of this. She's growing humans. Her body is changing, her emotions are on overdrive, and these two unstable lovebirds are treating the pregnancy like it's some group project. Amy, in particular, seems to think she gets a say just because she's temporarily in the picture. She even mentioned how crazy it was for Ryder to be having twins when she and the ex don't have twins in their family. Their family. That right there? That delusion? That's the moment you know she's trying to write herself into a story that doesn't belong to her. Ryder did what so many people wouldn't have the strength to do. She kept things clear, documented, through text or email only. She didn't lash out, she didn't play games, she just drew boundaries. And those boundaries? Crucial. Because what came next was even more surreal. The ex and Amy said they were having trouble being a stable couple because they weren't being treated like they were equally part of the baby's lives. Let that sink in. They're blaming Ryder, a pregnant woman, for the instability of their relationship, as if she's supposed to validate their situationship to make them feel like parents. When they pushed the envelope even further, talking about being present at the birth, co-parenting decisions, visitation at her house, and even calling Amy mama, Ryder did what had to be done. She sat them down, and this wasn't just some casual chat over coffee. This was a boundary-setting intervention. She let them speak, took notes, wrote down every outlandish expectation, and then, with calm but firm resolve, she dismantled their fantasy. She told them plainly, if the ex wants to be at the birth, fine. But Amy, no. Baby name discussions? Between Ryder and the father, period. Visitation at her house? Absolutely not. If Amy's still around when visitation eventually starts, and it's his time, she can be present. But that's where the line is. There is no Mama Amy. There's one mother here, and that's Ryder. And then came the part that really mattered. The part that reminded her ex exactly where they stand. She looked him in the eye and told him, no matter how many times you miss this family, no matter how nostalgic you feel, no matter what longing creeps in, this will never be a romantic reunion, ever. And when Amy tried to pitch them as a package deal, Ryder shut it down, with grace, with strength, with truth. After the meeting fell apart, because it inevitably would, her ex started emailing her, saying she's making this harder than it should be and she needs to work with them for the baby's sake. But here's the thing. She's already working for those babies. She's making the tough choices. She's setting boundaries that protect their emotional well-being. She's making sure the circus of her ex's love life doesn't become the backdrop to her children's first years. So, is she the asshole? Not even close. Ryder isn't being difficult. She isn't being bitter, she isn't being possessive, she's being a mother. A damn strong one. And while two people are flailing around trying to play house, she's doing the heavy lifting, literally and emotionally. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about protecting her children from chaos. And sometimes doing what's right for your kids means saying no to people who want to insert themselves into roles they haven't earned. Ryder's not wrong. She's real. And she's not creating problems. She's solving them before they start. Am I the asshole for not telling my boyfriend about his daughter starting her period and giving her Midol? There's a moment in every girl's life where childhood quietly gives way to womanhood, and when that moment comes unexpectedly, it doesn't just sneak in. It crashes down with confusion, pain, and the aching hope that someone will handle it gently. Ryder, a 29-year-old woman, found herself in that role. Not as a mother, not even as a stepmom, but as the adult woman in the house when her boyfriend's 11-year-old daughter hit that milestone, her very first period. Now, the setup was innocent. The girl's mom was out of the country on vacation in Japan, like leaving her with her dad, Ryder's boyfriend, for 2 full weeks instead of the usual weekends. And to keep things fun, Ryder made a plan to take her swimming on Saturday. The girl was ecstatic. That pure kind of joy kids have when summer's around the corner and the pool is finally open. But then Saturday arrived and something was off. She didn't get out of bed. She looked pale, uncomfortable, miserable in a way that wasn't just physical. Her dad, confused, took her temperature. Nothing, no fever, just silence. The girl didn't want to go anywhere. She shut down, and here's where the instincts kick in, the subtle signs something deeper is going on. Ryder sensed it. This wasn't just a lazy Saturday, so she knocked on the door later, gently asking if something was bothering her. School problems? Drama? Anything at all? The girl hesitated, and then, with tears threatening to spill over, she asked Ryder to promise not to tell her dad. And that one request, that was everything. Because in that moment, the little girl wasn't just dealing with a biological change. She was terrified, embarrassed, desperate for privacy, for safety, for a woman who wouldn't make it worse. Ryder promised, and the girl finally said it. She had started her period. She was scared. She was using toilet paper because she didn't know what else to do. She was hurting, cramping, lost, and her mom, her safe space, was halfway across the world. What did Ryder do? She stepped up, quietly, compassionately. She ran to the store, bought pads, multiple types so the girl could choose, chocolate and a heating pad. She said she was just going out to get snacks. She didn't make a scene. She didn't panic. She gave her 2 Midol tablets for the pain and stayed close in case the cramps worsened. By Sunday, the girl was feeling better, and by that evening, her mom was home. She told her everything, no hesitation. Because her mom, that was her comfort zone. And if her mom thought her dad should know, she could be the one to tell him. Ryder didn't need to betray the promise she made to this scared, aching little girl for the sake of what? A timeline? But Monday morning, that's when the calm broke. Ryder's boyfriend found out from his ex, and his reaction? Fury. He called Ryder furious. She hadn't told him. Furious she gave his daughter Midol without permission. Furious she had handled something he saw as a medical condition without consulting him first. And here's where things get really complicated, because you can understand where everyone is coming from. Of course he was concerned. Of course it's his daughter, and he wants to be in the loop when something significant happens. But Ryder, she wasn't just choosing sides, she was honoring trust. An 11-year-old's fragile trust in a deeply vulnerable moment. And here's the part people often miss. That trust? It's not easily earned, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. If Ryder had gone behind her back and told her dad, that moment of vulnerability would have turned into shame. And that girl, she might never have opened up to her again. Ryder wasn't playing mom. She wasn't overstepping. She was simply being there as a woman, as a safe space, as someone who understood the pain of that first period and the panic of not knowing what to do with it. And Midol, we're talking about over-the-counter medication, the kind parents routinely give for cramps, the kind thousands of women rely on each month just to function. Ryder wasn't giving antibiotics or something dangerous. She was giving relief in a moment when it was desperately needed. And still, she's left doubting herself because she doesn't have kids of her own. Because parenting comes with a long, tangled list of what-ifs and should-haves, and she's wondering if she crossed a line she couldn't see. But here's the truth. She didn't cross a line. She walked one. Carefully, respectfully, with empathy and restraint. This wasn't about secrecy. It was about timing. It was about letting a little girl feel some control over a terrifying new experience, and trusting that her mom, once she was back, would decide how and when to loop in her dad. So, is Ryder the asshole? No, she's not. She's human, thoughtful, present, and in that moment she chose trust over panic, compassion over protocol. The dad's reaction? Understandable, but misplaced, because sometimes being a safe adult in a child's life means keeping promises that aren't easy, and doing so without applause, without recognition, just quiet, unwavering presence. And if this story says anything, it's that those quiet moments, they're the ones kids remember forever. Am I the asshole for telling my dad to fuck off and cry to someone else because he doesn't get to blame me for his wife giving birth to a stillborn baby? Some stories don't start with heartbreak. They build toward it, layer by layer, scar by scar. And by the finally snaps, you're not looking at a single moment of cruelty. You're staring at the aftermath of years of silent battles, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion. This is one of those stories. Ryder is 18 now, but her timeline with her father, it fractured over a decade ago. When her parents divorced, she was just 7 years old, and what followed wasn't a clean break. It was a slow unraveling. Her dad moved out and, within what felt like minutes, started dating again. One woman after the other paraded through their lives, and then came her, the woman he'd eventually marry. The woman who, from the very start, Ryder just knew was wrong for all of them. This wasn't just Dad's new girlfriend. This was someone who, alongside Ryder's dad, tried to erase their mother's presence forcefully. They'd say things like, "You have two moms now," and actually taunted their real mom as if parenthood were some cruel competition. Let that sink in. Instead of helping his kids heal from a divorce, Ryder's dad weaponized their emotions. He didn't build a new safe space. He tried to replace the old one with something colder, sharper, and more manipulative. So when Ryder says she stopped going to his house 2 years ago, that wasn't a sudden act of rebellion. That was the result of years of emotional erosion. A slow, painful process of realizing that the man who was supposed to be your protector had chosen someone who treated you like a project and then backed her up at every turn. And this new wife, she didn't just marry into the family, she tried to reshape it, turning Ryder's youngest sister into a mini version of herself, piling attention onto her brother, thinking maybe the boy would fall in line. But Ryder, she was too old, too aware, too deeply tied to memories of a time before it all went sideways. And so the gap grew wider. Visits became shorter. Eventually, Ryder's siblings dropped down to weekends only, and even then, it was court-ordered. Not voluntary, not joyful, just obligatory. Their dad had even tried to flip the script, accusing their mom of parental alienation, but that little file their mom kept, that quiet documentation of everything, taunts, manipulations, lies, it shut that down fast. And then came the next twist in this deeply fractured story. Dad and his wife started trying for a baby, 2 miscarriages, then a 3rd pregnancy that seemed like it might actually make it. Ryder didn't care much by then. The damage was already done. She wasn't waiting on a sibling. She wasn't invested in that part of her dad's life anymore. But then came the moment this whole storm truly began. Dad was out of town. The wife went into labor, early, scared, alone. And who did she call? Ryder. Not her own family, not a hospital, not a friend. She called the stepdaughter she'd spent years trying to dominate and manipulate. She begged Ryder to take her to the hospital, to hold her hand, to be there. But Ryder didn't budge. And honestly, who could blame her? After all those years of hurt, manipulation, and emotional games, she wanted kindness, support, love from someone she treated like a pawn. Ryder said no. She told her to find someone who actually cared. It wasn't cold, it was honest. Brutally so. Then came the news. The baby had been stillborn. A tragedy. Yes, but not one that suddenly rewrites history. And that's when her dad came crashing back in. Not with apologies, not with grief aimed at himself or his wife, but blame. Direct, furious blame aimed at Ryder because she hadn't helped, because she hadn't saved the baby, because somehow, through his twisted lens, it was her fault. And that broke something final. She told him to fuck off, told him to cry to someone else, because no, he didn't get to rewrite the narrative. He didn't get to blame her for the consequences of a situation they created. He wasn't a good dad. He wasn't the hero of this story. He was the reason the relationship burned to ash in the first place. And when he tried to guilt her even further, saying she lost a sibling, that he was her father, that he was a damn good dad, she snapped back with the truth. He wasn't. He proved it. Over and over. And that pain, it wasn't from losing a sibling, it was from being forced to confront, again, that the man who should have loved her unconditionally never really did. Now her mom's scrambling, trying to protect her younger siblings from being forced into more court-ordered visits. The fear isn't about custody battles, it's about losing the little bit of peace they've been able to salvage. So let's be real here. Is Ryder the asshole? No, she's not. She's a teenage girl who grew up being emotionally discarded, gaslit, and used as a pawn in an adult's ego war. She's someone who had to protect her younger siblings from the same fate. Someone who, for once, set a boundary. And when that boundary was crossed, she didn't crumble. She stood firm. Grief doesn't excuse blame. And being a parent doesn't give you the right to emotionally gut your child because your world fell apart. Ryder wasn't responsible for that baby. She wasn't responsible for her dad's wife. She was responsible for herself, and in that moment, she chose herself. So no, she's not the villain. She's the product of a broken home, trying to navigate the ruins without letting them consume her. And she did what so many never find the courage to do. She said no, and sometimes that's the only power you have left.